Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Witcher Season 2, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Yennefer and Fringilla's side of things. Obviously, we pick up with Yennefer. She's having a nightmare. And it's an interesting nightmare, because at first, like, she's with Geralt, and she's pregnant. So I guess it's supposed to be, like, kind of a little bit of a life of everything she wanted. But then, like, she dreams about the baby catching fire, and then there's someone in a red robe. And you're like, what's that about? And then she wakes up, and I see someone with blonde hair. I'm like, is that Filavandro? And it turns out it is. It's like, yeah, she's with the elves. We learned a lot of interesting things about the elves that haven't really been touched on too much. I mean, obviously, we've known about the cleansing of how very few elves there are left. But the fact is that the elves are at such a point that, and it makes sense why their numbers are dwindling even more, because there hasn't been a pure blood elf born in decades, apparently, according to Yennefer. Which makes sense. I mean, look at her dad. Her dad was a half elf, so she's only like a quarter elf. So... But I guess it's like, right, the only way they can reproduce is mainly through, because I guess any means of trying to, like, reproduce amongst other elves hasn't worked out. So if pure blood hasn't been born in ages. So if any child was born, it's usually mixed with a human. So I guess that's kind of all they really have. And obviously, it puts them in a very compromising or complicated position, considering, like, well, the elves have every reason to hate humans, considering, well, humans have pretty much brought them close to extinction, so... I forgot what it was that Filavandro was saying, like, right, capturing both Fringilla and Yennefer, he was going to offer them up as something, like they were going to be useful in some regard, because it turns out they're at a temple where basically the prophets, the elven prophets are, like, buried or something like that. So, but the person kind of running things is Francesca, not Filavandro, which is interesting, considering the last time we saw him in this canon. I mean, who knows how long ago that was him and Geralt, as well as Jaskier ran into him back in season 1. Like, who knows how long it's been since then. I'd assume like a couple years. But the fact is that he's not the one kind of in charge. But he's asking, like, you know, Francesca's saying, like, who cares about these humans? Let's basically, like, kill them and basically offer them up to, like, some kind of sacrifice. Because it's interesting because her and Fringilla are kind of the same ilk. They're both people who are driven by faith, believing that they're on the righteous cause, that everything is going to work out if they just believe that they have enough faith. And Yennefer's not that type. She's just kind of like, no, like, if you're going to make anything happen, you need to have power to make it happen. Believing in something to happen is just like, no, like, you gotta, like, have faith in your own power, be your own person in that matter. So, because Francesca's doing everything she can for the entirety of all elf people, but even Filavandro's kind of like, right, what we're looking for. It almost sounds like the elven equivalency to, it sounds like almost like they're looking like for a Valhalla, like a salvation for the elven people in certain regards. I know Valhalla is like more like a salvation like afterlife wise, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like, it seems like it's something of that ilk that they're looking for. And Filavandro isn't so heavy in belief in this. He doesn't have the faith that Francesca or like her brother does, because her brother, I think, believes in her, and she's just like, right, keep up the faith and we'll find a way. So, but it turns out Francesca, Fringilla, and Yennefer all had a dream about someone in a robe. Francesca saw someone in white, Fringilla saw someone in black, and Yennefer saw someone in red. So it's like, right, for all three of us to be having the same dream, there has to be something there, especially because it's like, right, it's two humans and an elf. Like, what would correlate for that to happen? Well, I mean, also Yennefer's in a special place because she is, well, like I brought up, like a quarter elf, which even then she was like, oh, I'm an elf, but it's like, oh, like, did you, like, practice the practices and stuff like that? You know, have you ever shed tears for the elven people? She's like, no, I didn't think so. You're not an elf. Like, don't kind of claim it. Because she never really knew that much about herself until, like, a long time ago. But she's never really taken up the elven side of things. Because it's also, like, it's not like you'll come off as an elf. Like, once again, she's a quarter elf. So she will 100% pass as a human. So it's like, it's not like you've ever really like had the struggles. Granted, yes, she's had her own struggles and complications, but still, those obviously have those complications obviously disappeared decades ago when she basically got herself reconstructed to be the image of who she wanted to be. So, there is this interesting conversation when they're trying to get Phil Evandro on their side, telling him like, oh, like maybe we can help you figure out what's going on here, because it's like, yeah, they reference like Jaskier's song, and he's just like, oh, that lying bard, and it's like, yeah, because even Geralt called him out, I was like, that didn't happen. Jaskier's like, who cares? It makes for a good song. It's my legacy. Who cares? So it's like, right, Phil Evandro still got to listen to like all the stupid lies from that stupid bard and his stupid song. I love that. And it's funny considering, like, yeah, Yennefer has a personal relationship, quote-unquote friendship. You're tangentially connected to said bard. I guess I'll just kind of leave it as. But when the time comes, though, they go inside the temple with Francesca, and we hear her, like, her dream, and even... we learned a lot about Nilfgaard, especially from Fringilla's perspective, that she talked about her dream was about the usurper being toppled by Emir, and like, oh, he saved me, and we kind of get more context to that later, that basically when the usurper came in, basically took the throne, all the mages were locked up for years into a playhouse. So it's like, using that term specifically, you're like, damn, so... Because that's why she was having a nightmare about people touching her, like, ever so gently, and, like, why it bothered her is because the position she was put in for years until Emir showed up and saved all of them. So that's why she has such faith, especially because she's like, oh, the White Flame chose him. Like, because she even tried to be like, the fact is that the Nilfgaard has no beef with the elves. The fact of the matter is, we want to topple the people that did this to you. But the elf is like, Phil Evandro is like, a thieving thief is just another thief, essentially. It's like, right, the enemy of my enemy is just another enemy. Like, you're no better. Like, will you actually give, Zintra back to us? And they're like, Zintra is like, it was Sintra's elven name. It's like, yeah, once Nilfgaard has basically stomped all over Calathane's, like, kingdom and stuff like that, like, would you actually give it back to us? It's like, no, because you're humans, and you might be acting like you're better than the, Cintrans, but you're not. You're like every other human, because at the end, all humans are the same, so... But obviously it shows you the inconsistencies between, initially, like, the Francesca and, Fringilla, and then, like, when we got to Yennefer's dream, she didn't really talk about it. She because she didn't want to talk about the context of everything that was in her dream, so she just kind of moved along. But it turns out that the being in front of them, it's about some, like, incantation or something like that, leading to like a hut with no windows or doors or something like that. And even when they got down there, Yennefer's like, right, maybe this whole thing isn't what you think it's going to be. You think it to believe to be your salvation, but it's like, I was wondering if there was any correlation with a story that Vesemir told this episode about there being the first Witcher sealing away a demon in like some woods. And I was like, is that what that's supposed to be? It's just, I thought the interesting timing was like, oh, they are in woods and forests, and he's referencing some demon and stuff like that. Because they would never say, like, the demon was actually killed, just that the demon was sealed away in a forest, I think. So I was like, is that who that lady's supposed to be? I don't know. We'll have to, well, like I said, wait and see. But each one of them saw different people. Francesca saw, like, the elven person, like, or prophet or whatever that she, what was it, Elithine? Obviously, Fringilla saw Emir, and Yennefer saw some girl, and I was like, is that girl supposed to be like, oh, maybe... They never clarify why it manifested that way. Is that supposed to be like is that supposed to be like the daughter you want, the child you wanted to have, and it's like, oh, this will be me. Like, they never... It's interesting because she was trying to figure out what everyone wanted, and she was like, at first you seem like you were hard to figure out, Yennefer, but then it's like, no, you're just like everyone else. You were pretty easy to figure out. Because it turns out Fringilla wants, well, power. It's like, the fact of the matter is, you want power that's your own. Like, faith can only get you so far, but with power, you can be your own woman and not having to rely on someone else. Because, I mean, especially from her situation of, like, when the usurper did what he did, it's like, she had to, like, wait to be saved, but it's like, right, you want your power to, like, be your own, so you're not reliant on someone else. Kind of, I can give you the power. And even Francesca is willing to do whatever for the sake of saving the elven people, because she says that she's never had a successful childbirth, like a child to come to term. And so it's like, oh, I can make that happen. All you have to do is ask. That's what it seems like. She can't, it seems like whatever her situation is, she's bound. She needs you to give yourself over willingly. Whoever that witch is, whatever she is, she needs you to give over willingly, because she can't force you. She can manipulate you and just be like, oh, look at all this wonderful stuff I can offer you. I can give you everything you want. All you have to do is submit. So she was like, right. We got a little bit into like the ins and outs of this world. Obviously, the term kind of got thrown out last season, but in the context, like, I guess unless you've read the books and really know this world, it won't mean as much to you. It's like the conjunction of the spears. So it's like, I guess like the spears is the structure of this universe, and it ended up these spears coming together, and that's actually how monsters came into this world, where the conjunction of the spears, and like humans had to run from them, like lost in a new world, which I believe it was Francesca's brother that was like, new to you. Like, this world has always been ours. You were basically the interlopers. So it's like, right, the elves were here long before humans were. But I think it's because all these worlds collided into one and kind of technically gave birth. It's kind of like a multiverse collapsing type of thing. Like, well, like Earth Prime in the DC universe. It's like, yeah, everything collapsed onto one Earth. So I think maybe that's supposed to be equivalency of it. Because they've never really gone into the ins and outs of it, but obviously we got some like calligraphy, like some drawings on the wall. It's kind of like depicting that past and stuff. But worlds linked by chaos and stuff. But it also brought up something interesting. Like, initially when they brought up the fact, when she was talking about, oh, Yennefer, like, haven't you noticed that you've been a little different? At first, I thought it was implying, and this was just me, I thought it was implying that Yennefer was pregnant at the time before she went full-blown burn everything and everyone in season 1's finale. And I thought it was kind of implying, like, you know, magic comes, like, with drawing that much chaos and stuff comes, like, it needs an equilibrium. There has to be a price to be paid for using magic like that, burning through so much all at once. So I thought it was implying that she lost her baby in the process of using the fire. I thought that's what the nightmare and all that was kind of like being indicative of, but it's like, no, she lost magic, which is like the biggest thing to Yennefer, because she sacrificed everything for that power. And it's like, right, with it being gone now, it's like, who am I without it? Like, I mean, that also makes you wonder, like, will she start aging like a normal person? Because is she no longer a mage? But it's like, right, the moment she burned through all that chaos, like, it severed her link and she can't use magic. It's like, right, that's why she was like, at first she was like, because she was bringing up the Frangilla, she's like, I'm feeling off. She thought it was just the chains. It's like, no, your connection was severed. You're not feeling, you don't have any more, like, chaos, and you burn through it all. And now it's like, because it's like, right, now that you don't have those shackles on you, why didn't you try to pull it away? It's because, like, right, you've known the entire time. And I love it comes full circle, like, from the thing that Tesea would have everyone do with, like, lifting the rock. And she's trying to do it, and it won't work. And it's like, right, you've known the truth the entire time. And even then, the witch reveals herself. It's like, right, when the time comes, like, I'm going to basically wait for you to completely break. Until, like, you're begging me to come, like, take it all away or something like that. Because it is interesting. I guess because of that, like, she's waiting to, like, break Yennefer. Like, but what do you need all three of them? Because it's like, right, she was able to convince Francesca and Fringilla to, like, work together. Because it's like, right, you need to be with the world of man to get what you want. So the elves are working with Nilfgaard to get what they want because, well, helping Nilfgaard get what they need just so that the elves can get what they need in the grand scheme of the survival. But Yennefer's like, right, you can't believe that woman. That woman's no god. She's just a witch. But it's like, Fringilla's like, right, if she's so evil, why'd she let you go? And I'm like, yeah, you know, I think that should be, that is the $1 million question. But I think it's also probably because of all that stuff, you know, Yennefer learning to, well, no longer in denial, because she tries to portal away at the end, but it doesn't work. So it's like, yeah, it's true. And maybe she didn't want to bring that up in front of, because at least she could front beforehand around Fringilla to be like, oh, I've got these powers. Like, the last thing you want to do is pretend to be weak around her, like, because that could backfire on you. So maybe that's why she wasn't too open with Fringilla. Because also it's probably connected to the fact that she was in denial. But like I said, she sacrificed so much for that power, and she tried to do everything she could to kind of reverse that to some extent. Like, not away with all taking away the power, but like what she had to sacrifice for that power. She tried everything she could last season to get it back, and now it's like, right, you don't have that, you also don't have the power you sacrificed everything for. It's like almost like, what was the point? Was it even worth it all in the end, essentially, you know? So that's definitely going to be fascinating to see where things kind of go on that front. But on the other side of things, we have Geralt and Ciri finding their way to Kaer Morhen. And yeah, it's like Ciri asked the question, like, how many Witchers are there? And you never said how? He's like, no, I didn't. He's like, before I left, it was like 20, might be even less than that now, depending on how many died. I mean, because he at least knows there's at least one that died last season, so. But the moment he gets in there, like, this is our first time really getting to see Geralt, like, interact with other Witchers, and just, like, the brotherhood symbolism. I'm assuming the 3 that kind of greeted him, like, first and foremost, or at least the 2 or 3 that greeted him at first, I was like, they're probably the last survivors of the attack all those years ago, like the orphans that Vesemir took care of. Because I was wondering, I was like, yeah, because at the end of the movie, there was only, like, Geralt was one of 4 orphans. But I'm like, right, Vesemir probably went down and tracked down others and replenished their ranks to some extent. Probably not to, like, the extent that it was. I mean, like, most of the Witchers, like, died. He was the last. Vesemir's the only one that survived, so. But kind of like this brotherhood and welcomingness of like them like hugging it out and everything. Obviously, Eskel comes and he had run into a Lynchy, which is like, oh, hey, Vesemir dealt with one of those pretty early, like at the beginning of the movie. So it's like, oh, bringing that back, especially because we got introduced to Vesemir. I brought this up during the movie. Once again, these should, and depending on when I'm able to finish all of these and get them edited and uploaded, Vesemir, the actor who plays him present day is the thing I know him best from is playing Constantine in Killing Eve. I was like, hey! Because I stumbled across some junket stuff, and then like I saw him with, I believe it's Freya, the actress who plays... Because I always get them confused. Like, I want to say Freya's the actress who plays Ciri, and it's Anya is the actress who plays Yennefer, but I kind of flip their names sometimes. But I want to say like it was him like doing some promotional stuff with junket stuff with Freya. But tangents and all of that. I just thought that was kind of neat. I was like, hey. It was interesting, too, when Geralt and Vesemir had that whole conversation. He was like, right, when you told me about the Lyle surprise thing, I told you you made a mistake. Then you told me, oh, you weren't going to, like, claim it. And I was like, good, you still made a mistake. But it's like, right, it's like, how did the child escape Sentry? It's like, she lied to me. Because the thing is, she hasn't displayed her powers and she hasn't really talked about it. But he has some idea, potentially, what her circumstances are. But I think Ciri's probably scared to admit because she's like, she doesn't want to seem like a freak, probably especially everything with like Verena last episode makes her probably even less likely to talk about it, but she didn't talk about it even before then. But maybe those events last episode makes her even more reluctant to talk about it. But, well, because Geralt has experience with that to some extent because he saw Pavetta use those abilities, because even Calathing, she was like, oh, like my mother's gift, I thought it skipped you like it skipped me. So it is interesting how that works. So like it skipped Pavetta's mom, but it made its way to Pavetta and Ciri. So once again, we never fully got to see what that power is, what Ciri is, because it's like who she is and what she is. That's why Geralt's not pushing it too much, the subject. He's just like watching from afar, like, right, I'll let her, tell me when the time comes. Like, I'll just basically watch and try and figure out her circumstances. But at the end of the day, he promises to protect her. And obviously, she's amongst them. Like, she even was trying to find a good room for her, and Geralt and Esco was like, oh no, this isn't a castle, princess. Every room is a shithole. Esco had brought some ladies to their home and everything, which I was like, oh, that seems weird. It seems like, because even Geralt made a whole point of like, right, we try to stay hidden, because he brought up the whole thing, because he brought it up last episode about the attack. He's like, right, because of that, the Witchers try to stay hidden because they don't want people to know. I guess the knowledge about where they are got lost to history, so no one really knows anymore. Because I guess it was kind of a known thing at one point in time where to find the Witchers. It's not a known thing, and like I said, I think it's just they keep it, at least the way there is lost. Maybe people are aware where they're from, just not how to get there. The pathway there is long lost to human history, I guess. But the fact is, Eskel brought people there. I was like, oh, that seems kind of... Everyone's kind of enjoying themselves. Lo and behold, one of the people that Geralt runs into, and she's like, oh, hey! And she had to remind him, it's like, right, I got Basca's blood out of your... He was like, no, it wasn't a Basca, it was Wyvern blood or whatever. But I was like, hey! She's from the Striga episode. She was the lady, she's like, yeah, we ran into it a couple of years ago. He's like, right, I remember you now. I love it. I was like, that's so interesting. And the fact is, word's gotten around about Geralt having a kid, and he was like, she's not my kid. It's like, oh, well, almost being like, well, I can take her off your hands, and she could do it. And he was like, no. And she's like, oh, and you say you're not a father. I'm like, why would you even throw that out there? But I think also for Geralt, it's like, cool, the last thing I need is, like, the fact is, how the hell has word spread like that? It must have been like, Eskel must have been running his mouth off about, Cirilla or something. Like how would word get out about Geralt having a kid that fast? This is such a new development. Like, he hasn't been around anyone, at least that we're aware of, for that knowledge to kind of spread. So it must have just been like she heard it there, which I'm like, there's a good chance she's gonna go off and, like, you know her profession and everything, she talks to people, like she gets paid to kind of play that, that girlfriend experience to an extent. So that information is definitely going to get out there, and that's kind of an issue, because Geralt's doing everything he can to protect her. That's why he brought her here, because he wanted to find a place that would actually keep her safe. But I love the conversation he had with Vesemir. It's like, because Vesemir's like, are you really ready to take care of her? And then he brings up, it's like, well, what about you? You were the last Witcher, and you took care of us orphans. Like, were you ready? He was like, no. And it's like, yeah, but it's like, but you did what you did. You protected us. He's like, no. I taught you how to fend for yourself. So kind of being indicative of, like, trying to, tell Geralt, I think it was setting up, like, you can't just protect her forever. You got to teach, like, I taught you to take care of yourself. You need to learn to take care of, she needs to learn to take care of herself, essentially, because you won't always be able to be there to protect her from everything. Like, because that's what he's trying to shield her from the nastiness that is this world. Like I said, you kind of see that last episode, and you definitely see it this episode. That's why he picked this place where he felt like she would be safe. Because Ciri was looking around. She was asking a whole bunch of questions about, because obviously Eskel had come back with Lecce's arm, and they're examining it. Once again, like, we know that that's their process to understand monsters, because it's essentially Lecce's are so rare, like, not rare, but they're borderline extinct. The only ones you'll find are ones that have been around since the conjunction of the spears, because they can't reproduce. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting, considering, like, obviously they have a little bit in common with Witchers in that regard, right? But even then, there's the whole, Ciri is still kind of avoiding conversations about Cintra and Cintra's fall and everything, because what really sparked all of this, for reason why Geralt is going above and beyond the way he is, he's like, he was there. He was like, I was there in Cintra, locked in a jail cell, just the screams, the death, like, I heard it all. And for him, he felt helpless, just like he was, and we got context for him, like, being in that cellar, which I was almost hoping that he was going to bring up. Oh God, I'm blanking on her name. Like, was it like Ilyana or like Ilyana? I think Ilyana. It would have been interesting to kind of like name drop her there, but it's like, well, he didn't spend enough time with her to know her name. So it probably wouldn't come up in casual conversation, because he was a kid at the time, but also he didn't get to know her in that time frame. But that's what sparked it even more in him. Is like, right, he remembered being a little kid and having all these people around him die and he couldn't do anything. So that's why he wants to go above and beyond, like, because he knows, because I think to some extent he feels like he knows what she's feeling, right? The helplessness and not being able to help the people you care about as you watch, like, your home and the people you care about most die around you. Like, that's a harsh thing to live with and carry. So I think that's extra motivation for why he wants to protect Ciri. But she did kind of look around, and like I brought up earlier, Vesemir is try to tell her the story, but Ciri's like, yeah, I don't scare you. He's like, oh, you don't, do you? And even showed off Deglin's armor and everything. I was like, hey! Once again, I'm really glad that I did decide to watch the movie before watching Disease, because I'm like, hey, I know the story, because he's like, right, Human killed him in these very halls. To be fair, he made sure to kill a lot of people on his way out. But still. When the time came, though, it turns out Eskel was infected by the Lychee, which apparently it seems like that. I guess even this applies to like the whole they're not supposed to be able to reproduce, but he came home hoping that they could help him. He thought he could fight it off. He knew something was wrong. He just wasn't sure, but he thought like, no, I could fight it off. So I think that's why he was trying to drown his pain in the women and all the fun and pleasure, because he was in so much pain. He was like, no, I got this. Like, I guess trying to prove himself strong to himself above anyone else. And so obviously, like, there's the conversation. I guess this, well, I was about to say Vesemir never had the conversation with the Witchers of Light, right? Don't hesitate, because initially upon seeing that it's Eskil, Geralt stopped, but Vesemir showed up to help him, and it's like they fought against him, but Vesemir was reluctant to kill him because it's like, right, there's so few Witchers left, but also it's like every Witcher that's come afterwards, it's one of his children, it's one of his boys, just like he was one of Declan's, and so. Which is interesting, because like Ciri had made that connection of like, oh, Declan was kind of like a father to you, like you are to Geralt. He's like, yeah, sort of, I guess, you know, because they don't really ever define those relationships like that. It's complicated, I'm sure, but I especially like the way Geralt got there. It's not like he necessarily got there by choice, you know. Apparently, like, his mom probably had a vision of the future and just kind of tossed him. At least that's how the season finale kind of implies it, you know. But kind of tossed him towards his destiny, is what I'm trying to say. But when the time came, even though Vesemir was trying to save him, Geralt had no choice but to put him down. I was like, I think that's the first time we've seen Geralt use fire magic. He put it on his sword and stabbed him. And it's like, even Vesemir's like, right, you did what you had to do. You didn't have much choice. And so Geralt ended up, because Ciri stayed even though the others ran, because he was like, no, like, what if Geralt, and the lady was like, nah, Geralt's probably dead. Let's get out of here. But essentially, Ciri stayed, and she was glad that he was okay. He's like, we're safe now, right? And Geralt knew, was like, no, we're not. So he's training her. It's like, right, the world is dangerous, and, you know, and he thought this place could be safe, but the world is getting more and more dangerous. But at the very least, as long as you have your sword by your side, you'll be able to defend yourself. You'll be prepared for whatever comes your way. So now begins her training. So that she won't, because it's just like, there is nowhere safe in this world anymore. It's like, even behind these walls, I thought you were safe. The outside found its way here. So I have to, I can't just protect you. I've got to teach you how to protect yourself. So the start of something very interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting to see, you know, ultimately where this goes as Ciri continues her training. Obviously, everything with Nilfgaard and the elves, as well as universe situation. It's going to be interesting to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.